All right, so it looks like we are here, and I think we are probably ready to get started.
All right, well, we'd like to thank everybody, and I guess we should just say that if you've watched this one live, this is a re-recording of the live version because the live version didn't record quite correctly. So with that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Sean Huber. I'm the Director of Power and Component Solutions here at Rumsey Electric. Been with Rumsey about 24, 25 years. I've had multiple roles within the organization, but all generally speaking, Rockwell oriented from motion control and drives and on up. And Julia, you're here with us.
Thanks, Sean. Julia Santagata. I handle the networking, the automation, and the software side of the business. Have been with Rumsey for about 5 and in industry for just about 20 years now. I can't believe the number has gotten that high so quickly. Time sure does fly. But as you guys can see, we're doing something a little different this go around. We haven't seen all of our customers in so long, so we thought it might be a little more interesting if we joined you live in video for this call. So we'll be, you can see both of our faces here as we go along through the updates for you guys, our customer base.
Yep. So with that, we will get rolling, kind of run through what we're planning on talking about here today. So general agenda is a couple of very new things coming up for continuing to learn, a little bit around industrial controls, automation, networking, drives, and then how to get a hold of us when you need us and or any of the specialists on the general team. The idea of today is just to kind of give you stuff that has been new in the last couple of months. However, since this is the first one, it may be a little bit longer. However, the idea would be going into the future, we'll be bringing these things to you on just, the topics that are over the next couple of months, and you'll see some of the end of life announcements, which are important to know also.
And we're keeping it real here. I'm working from home. Sean's working from home. We figure most of you guys are working from home. So let's do it.
And nothing like an unfinished basement to be sitting in. So that's kind of where I'm coming from for at least the last month and a half or so. So anyway, so the first thing we wanted to bring up here is just real important to know, and it's not totally new, meaning the e-learning itself has been out for a little bit over a year. However, with the current situation we're in, where a lot of people aren't able to go to work or have updates and meetings and training like we typically would in person, Rockwell has, up until June 30th, allowed every one of our customers to have a log on for e-learning and be able to take one of their courses. So if you're not familiar with e-learning, a lot of this has pretty much taken over for what was at one time called the RS Trainer, but they've continued to enhance these e-learning courses, and right now there's 15 of them available. They're designed to be very highly interactive, and it is truly the full-fledged course that you would typically pay for. So one of the things that you can do right now is just Google e-learning or e-learning for Rockwell, and it'll take you right to their site. After this, we will be following up, and we probably should have started that way. We will be following up with a copy of this PowerPoint as well as all the supporting documents to get you there. However, in the e-learning aspect, if I flip a screen here, you can kind of see the overall amount of courses that are out and available for you. Anywhere from ControlLogix through motion, safety, power, and any one of these is available for you to take free of charge.
And if I could just add, Sean, that some of you guys who have taken some of the Rockwell in-person classes may recognize some of those part numbers, like CCP 183, Ethernet IP configuration and troubleshooting, or CCP 146, Logix 5000 fundamentals. These are actually the full curriculums for the in-person classes. So some of those classes would have normally been a 3-day class, like Sean said, and they're several thousands of dollars. They're usually somewhere in the $2,000, $3,000 range for the whole class. And these are the same curriculums virtualized with all sorts of different modules and workbook examples, different things like that. So getting one for free is a great offer we're excited about. We hope you guys take advantage of it, because it literally, the equivalent is a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for reference, when you're looking at this, any of the ones that are in the box are going to be releases that are coming up. So Rockwell is investing and continuing to expand into this e-learning content forum, but any of the ones that are just up there, without being enclosed are available for you to take right now. kind of continuing down that theme as far as being able to do some virtual learning. Many of you have heard of TechEd. That forum has been sort of morphed into another event that Rockwell's putting on called ROKLIVE. However, it was going to continue to be in June. However, it was supposed to be a live event. That's sort of changed with the current situation and has all moved over to a virtual event at this point. So literally as of today, which is May 7th, the virtual ROKLIVE registration website is open and available for you to get on and sign up. So a couple of things that I just wanted to point out specific to this. If you are able to just Google virtual ROKLIVE or the event itself, you can get to a session review, and through that session review you'll see a lot of different partner events, or I should say just overall topics that you'll be able to sit through, as well as doing hands-on labs that'll all be done in the cloud. So it's ultimately a very virtual user experience to do a lot of learning.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you guys that aren't overly familiar with RS TechEd, or now the new name ROKLIVE, I would think of it kind of like an automation fair, a little on steroids from a technical perspective. So it's a little more technical, the sessions, the tech sessions and the hands-on labs, a little more technical than you probably would have gotten at an automation fair type event, but very similar from a content perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's out there, it's available, good place to go get some training. So with that, I will take over and go through a handful of industrial controls updates that I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of. And again, any of these, feel free to reach out to any of the specialists for more information. And I think that's kind of the overall design of this update. So first and foremost, going on machine, there is a sensor selection tool that Rockwell's had out for a little while. So it's not brand new specifically. However, it is a site that you can go to when you're just trying to figure out what is the most appropriate sensor to pick for your application. So from my personal experience, I don't do a lot with sensors directly, which is why we have our sensor specialists. However, if you need to try and come up with at least a family to see the size of it, the kind of overall design, this is a real good place to go. So one of the reasons it's up here is this is consistently being updated. So right now we have a 3D imaging sensor that's up there that if you were trying to figure out, I think the example is if all the eggs are in a carton, it would be used for that. We have a 1D, 2D code reader, and then an 843 SIP safety encoder that I'll be talking about a little bit later, but all of that information has just been updated on this site. So how it would work is if I come in and I say, hey, I know I have a bottle I'm trying to figure out. If I go to that bottle and pick, was it reflector mount, plastic, kind of select that, and it gets me right into the family that I'm trying to find more information out about, and kind of maybe the mounting and some of that. So good thing for you to use, good place for you to reference and get information on how to pull some sensors. So with that, then, kind of going off the machine itself and going into the panel, something that is brand new, released just within the last month, is the newest version, 1694 electronic circuit protection. So this product was, there was another version of this, but it was bigger and bulkier. So if you're not familiar with them, it's a great way to use and protect 24-volt circuits in your control box. And do it in kind of a more elaborate way. And I mean that by, right now, most people use thermomagnetic circuit breakers, and they do work. However, there are some times when if you're just starting to overcurrent a particular circuit, the breaker could take an extra long period of time to trip. If you're in short circuit situations on power up, sometimes thermal mags don't trip right away, so you run into some problems. Inductive loads sometimes will give you some nuisance tripping. And the biggest one where the 1694 comes in is it allows you to use a single big power supply in your control box and split that out to a true class 2 power supply requirements. And many people don't look at a lot of light curtains and safety relays and those types of things. They all have a specification on them requiring class 2 power supply. So a couple pictures across the bottom are showing the LED indicators that are on them to give you if you're at 90% load and some of the other overall benefits. I won't go into great detail on the products themselves because there are a couple of neat videos that Rockwell has on the product page that are associated with telling you exactly how the LED diagnostics work. And then if you kind of go a little bit farther down on that page, there is one that's, how to assemble them, because there's nothing worse than when you think something's easy to assemble and it's not. So here's a video that shows you exactly how to do that, as well as one that's an online simulator. So if you wanted to see how fast the 1694 would react to an overcurrent situation versus a thermal mag, that particular demo will step you through and show you all the benefits. So kind of continuing in that in-panel mode, I wanted to at least bring to everybody's attention that there are some isolators that Rockwell has just come out with and continue to come out with different versions of them. They're in what's called the 931 series, but I specifically want to point out that it's the 931 Nano series. And part of the reason for specifying that is there was an older version that didn't have quite as many options available to you. In this new 931 Nano series, there's a lot of things around being able to do stuff like heart and 2, 3, 4 wire voltage control and some other stuff that allows you to do some applications that maybe you wouldn't have been able to do in the past. So a couple of things that are specific with this is if you look at the picture there, you'll notice that they're very narrow. So some of the units, or a good portion of the units, are only 6 millimeters wide. They do have onboard dip switch settings. There's ATEX ratings, and if you're using a lot of isolators in your cabinet, they do have a power rail to allow you to install a bunch of them very quickly. So just a new series to kind of look at and kind of check out. And then that brings me to kind of my last new product, literally within the last month. The SIP safety encoder has been released. Safety we've talked about for many years in many different formats. As the new drives and as the new servo controls come out, more things are associated to advanced safety. So things like safe speed, safe direction. They even have the one there at the bottom. It's on the bullet, the safe limited position. All of those things can be implemented and done better with having less wiring using this SIP safety encoder. So all of that being said, the unit itself does have a couple of stipulations, and that is that it needs to be used with the higher performing 5580s or 5380s. So from a catalog standpoint, that would be kind of the L8 processors or the 5069s if you're picking them out from a part number. But these are designed specifically to work with any of the PowerFlex series, the newer PowerFlex series, or the Kinetics 55, 5700 units. So check those out. They do have AOPs for Studio 5000, and it is designed to help implement a much higher rating of safety. Then the last couple slides here, I won't go into great detail because this coming Tuesday, the industrial control specialist will be talking a little bit more in detail about migration, but the couple big ones here that I want to point out is the E1 Plus, which is an overload that has been out and available for a long time from Rockwell, is finally coming to the end of its useful life. So coming April of 2021, so we have a year, you will no longer be able to get the E1 Pluses. However, the new E100 will be able to take over in its place. So just as you're designing new applications, if you're looking at old bill of materials, you'll want to start taking the E1 Plus over to the new series just by virtue of, it's kind of the end of its life. Beyond that, we have a couple of more popular obsoletes that I'll just mention here. The 855T, which is a stack light, that has been obsolete for a couple of months, but there's a fair amount of them out there. There is an 856T that can take over for that position. Same with, if you're going by catalog number, there's a 440 relays, which was the MSR. They've all moved over to the GSR relay, and that should be a good benefit to customers in general, because the new relay has the single wire safety and just a lot more capabilities. And then the last one is the older safety lights are basically moving over to a new version, the 450L light curtains, and they're a benefit in general because they have They're much more modular, so fewer spare parts, and you can have transceivers and receivers in them. Or there's a universal that can be either, and they all talk on Ethernet. So basically a couple of advantages that we have there. So I believe that is all I have for the industrial controls itself, and I will turn it over to you, Julie, to go through the automation.
Well, lots of good stuff, Sean. I'll get to the good stuff now, though. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But let me start with some of our traditional automation and software products. And I'll follow the same path that Sean did, talking to you about some of the new releases and then a little bit on the life cycle updates and then a couple of sneak peeks. All right, so the first product I wanted to talk to you about is the Flex 5000. And while the Flex 5000 isn't incredibly new, it's actually Rockwell's latest distributed I/O system, but it has been getting released in phases over the last couple of years. A couple of different phases have released already, and I'd want to talk to you about the newest phase. But just in case you're not overly familiar with the Flex 5000, let me just touch on what it does for you. So the Flex 5000 has been designed with the latest generation of CompactLogix and ControlLogix in mind. In fact, that is the only generation that it is compatible and does work with. So what that means is the 5380 from the CompactLogix, which is the third generation. From a part number perspective, that's the 5069- product. And then the L8 processors from the ControlLogix family. So those are the platforms that it works with. And you do need to use V31 of Studio 5000 or higher for this family. But overall, from a distributed I/O perspective, they really did a refresh and redesign with a lot of enhancements in mind, right? So you can mount up to 16 modules, integrate safety and different types of modules all in one lineup, can be mounted horizontal or vertical with no derating from a temperature perspective. And the way the modules come together, they snap on, no more bent pins. So it slides right onto the other unit, and that was one thing they had definitely kept in mind. And then the last thing with it is a lot of enhanced networking options, so really 2020 networking options. So it has gigabit capability both from copper and fiber perspective, and it also supports some of the latest kind of more advanced topologies, so like device level ring, linear star, PRP, parallel redundancy protocol. But let's talk about what's actually new in the family. And that is the release of two new analog modules. So these were released last month. There's an 8-point analog input. I had a hard time spitting that out for a second. And an 8-point analog output. And the important things with these are they're both being released with HART integrated capability. So they support V5, 6, and 7 of HART. There is an add-on profile available for that. If you are using these modules, you'll need to use V32 or higher, but these are now available and shipping. Then the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is a software or application that Rockwell is running a free use for right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you may have seen something about this already, but this platform or tool is called VUFORIA Chalk. It's primarily a mobile device application, but it can be used on your browser. And it's something called RAAR, Remote Assistance with Augmented Reality. So essentially what it does is it provides video conferencing between two people so they can actually collaborate like they're right there together on site. And what that means is, think of it a little bit as a FaceTime on steroids, except it's totally platform agnostic. So you don't need to worry about who has an iPhone, who doesn't have an iPhone, who's got a subscription to whatever other service, who doesn't have a subscription. If you're the host, you connect to somebody else, you give them a PIN, just like you guys got a link or a PIN to this call today. You don't need to be a registered user of anything, and you connect, and then you have a video call, but the difference becomes PTC, which is one of the companies that Rockwell has partnered with. They focus on augmented reality. So as you're doing the video call, each person can actually make marks on the screen, aka chalk marks, and they can circle devices or objects and really see live what each other is talking about. And then as you move down the machine or the line, those marks know where they are in space. So you can walk down the machine or line, you can walk back, and the marks you made are still there, still completely associated with a valve or device or PLC light that you were pointing at. So really, really neat software. Think it could be incredibly valuable to OEMs that are trying to support customers because they can't get on site, or anybody that's trying to do a factory acceptance test remotely, an engineering department. that maybe has a very slim staff at the factory because you can only have so many people, or there's social distancing, there's limitations to the amount of workers, so engineers can work with each other. Anyway, really neat, available for free through June 30th. And it's not like a commercial thing where you need to put a credit card or anything like that. It's literally just a free access. So we'll send you a link to get signed up for that if you would like to check it out. All right, then the next thing I want to talk to you about is just the STEPFORWARD program and a new addition to it. So I'm sure everybody is overly familiar with the SLIC hardware, the SLIC PLC platform. It's been around for a very long time. It's worked really hard for us. But in a lot of cases, it is time to migrate. And so Rockwell has something called the STEPFORWARD program. If you're not familiar, it provides you an additional discount if you trade in your old hardware because you're migrating up to a new piece of technology. So in this case, you could previously migrate from the SLICs to some of the original CompactLogix platforms, but the third generation controller, that 5069 I mentioned earlier, was not part of the program. And that is now part of the program. So just FYI, if it is time to migrate, and it probably makes a lot of sense to start looking at some of those SLICs because a lot of them have gone end of life, or they are active mature, or you could just get real technology benefits from migrating to a newer platform. You have the option to get into the latest of the CompactLogix family now and get that additional credit. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is back in the software realm. And that's a new software package called RSLogix Legacy. But before I dive into that, I want to talk a little bit about the change that Rockwell has made in the way they do activations for the Studio 5000 and some of the factory talk products. So if you go way back in the day, back all the way to V10 of RSLogix, they were using a system called Flexy for the activations. And somewhere, I don't know, I think it was probably 10 plus years ago now with V20, specifically V20.05, Rockwell added a second activation method called code meter to their systems. And most people were probably not aware, had no idea these different things were going on in the background, but from version 20.05 through earlier this year, they were supporting both of these activation methods. About 2 months ago, new activations, so new purchases of Rockwell software, will now only be supplied with the code meter activation. So if you think about that, V10, I can't even date back how many years ago that was. I think it's probably somewhere near the beginning of my career and probably close to 20. It is time to retire the Flexy activations, if you will, for new software purchases going forward. So what does that mean? That means if you buy a new Logix platform, a new Studio 5000 license, it is only going to support V20.05 and up. If you need to support products that are earlier than V20.05, and we hope you migrate them, but there are a lot of them out there, we know, then you'll need to purchase an RSLogix Legacy piece of software. That is the only software that will support those earlier versions now. A couple of things to note about that. It is only available as an annual subscription, so it's not available as perpetual to purchase once and you have it forever. You will need to purchase it on an annual basis, and that's good because in due time you'll migrate those and you won't need that software anymore. And the other thing to know is that if you do need to support products that are before V20, you can just buy the RSLogix Legacy subscription and you can support everything all the way through the new stuff. It's not a both. You don't need to purchase both. You can just purchase the RSLogix Legacy version. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and Joy, I guess the one thing just to make sure that it's clear, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, was just around where does things stand if you own the software from 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
Yeah, really good question. That's important to note, is that if you own software already, this does not affect you whatsoever. All of those activations that you have, the software that you have, will continue to function just like it does today, supporting old and new. This is only for new purchases starting about 30 days ago. Everything you have is good to go. Thanks, Sean.
Yep, no problem.
All right. So I ran through that kind of fast, but it's a little bit of a complicated issue. I just want to point you to two other things if you want to dive into that a little deeper around the change in activations. On the left, there is a blog that one of our specialists, Steve Huck, put out sometime in the last couple of weeks called Factory Talk Activations and links Logix 5000 compatibility. If you go on the website and you just search Factory Talk Activations, you will get that. You can read in greater detail. There's also a Rockwell knowledge base tech note if you want to read about that in greater detail. All right, so that kind of rounds it out for the new stuff. I'm going to transition here into some of the life cycle announcements that I think you guys should be aware of just from a planning perspective. So here on this slide you see a nice little layout of the MicroLogix family, another workhorse in the small controller platform. And on the top of this slide you see the newer MicroLogix products, right? The MicroLogix 1100, the MicroLogix 1400. And on the bottom half of the slide you see the original MicroLogix family offerings, and that's the 1000, the 1200, and the 1500. And back in 2017, the MicroLogix 1000 did get discontinued, the 1500 did get discontinued, but as of just recently, they announced the last one in that kind of original group. The MicroLogix 1200 does now have an end-of-life date. So we have a little bit of time. It's February of 2021, but we did want to make you guys aware that that will be coming next year. The MicroLogix 1200 will no longer be available for sale. So what do you do with that? There are a whole bunch of things that can help you migrate into one of the newer product families. In particular, the 1200 is a pretty straightforward migration into the Micro 850. There's a couple of resources here on this page, but the one I really want to point out is on the right. As part of our series here, we actually just did about 2 weeks ago a whole locked-in webinar on MicroLogix migrations, exactly what you needed to know from a hardware and a software and program perspective. So if you go to the Rumsey website, again, www.rumsey.com, you search MicroLogix migration, you will get a link to watch that webinar on demand. And that is it for the MicroLogix. So what else? CompactLogix. You guys heard me mention third generation and the 5069 quite a bit today. That has been out since 2015 already, so almost 5 years, and it is definitely the latest platform in the CompactLogix family. Behind that, there's the second generation, which was released in 2010, 10 full years ago, and that is 1769 part numbers. But even before that, we had the original first generation of CompactLogix. And you see in the box on the right that there were a handful of these products that were discontinued back in 2015 and 2016. And the announcement that I wanted to make you guys aware of today is that the balance of that first generation, all the way on the right, they have now been announced for discontinued, a couple of them in July and the balance at the end of this calendar year. Now these can most readily be identified by a serial port. So this first generation, they all had a serial port on the front of them. So if you're trying to understand if you do or don't have these, that's one good way to check the difference between a first and a second generation. First generation had serial ports. The second generation had a USB port, similar to the one you would find for your printer on the processors. And then obviously the third generation, the 5069, just looked completely different. All right. And then the next one that I wanted to call your attention to is the PANELVIEW Plus 6. So this is also a fairly new announcement, and we do have quite a bit of time on this, but we wanted to make you guys aware that the PANELVIEW Plus 6 has been announced as tentatively discontinued in September of next year. And so I think that probably won't come as a surprise to many people because there are 2 additional families, newer families, ahead of the PANELVIEW Plus 6. So there's already the PANELVIEW Plus 7 as well as the PANELVIEW 5000 families. And so with that, this really is one of the older technologies at this point. And there are some easy migrations from a 6 to a 7. So if you have 6s in your facility, you want to be aware that you would potentially need to make that migration. And then if you still are using 6s in any of your newer designs, it really probably is time to start looking at one of the newer platforms for your HMIs. All right, so that's the end of my life cycle stuff, but I want to give you a couple of sneak peeks. So I have 2 sneak peeks in here. We talked a little bit about the SLIC and the third generation CompactLogix being part of that Step Forward program. So if you are looking at those migrations, wanted to let you know, coming out here, hopefully at the end of May, sometime in June, is a wiring system conversion for the SLC. So what this allows you to do is retain all the wiring in the terminal strips of the SLC. So you don't have to take anything apart. You don't have to rewire all your points. no chance of making a mistake there, but if you watch that video in the middle square for a second, you'll see that this wiring system actually mounts right over the exact footprint of the original slick. So you saw the CompactLogix on top, and then behind it there you see the slick terminal strips. And I think that will, let me play that again just one more time for you. But you see the CompactLogix on the front, the slick terminal strips in the back, and then a wiring system that brings the two pieces together. So literally no rewiring at all. A lot less error, a lot quicker time to deploy, and you maintain that same footprint. So coming soon to a distributor, aka Rumsey, near you. Whoop, the video wants to play again.
Yeah, it always wants to play one more time.
One more time. It always goes one more time. That's right. It's neat to see. I'll take it one more time. All right, and then my last sneak peek here in an automation perspective is Compact GuardLogix. So just one more time with the 3rd generation CompactLogix, the 5380 family, aka the 5069 part numbers. We have had a SIL 2 Compact GuardLogix that has been available in shipping, but we didn't have a SIL 3 product. And just wanted to give you a sneak peek, let you know we do expect a SIL 3 version for your higher safety applications, your higher safety needs, coming on that newest platform, the highest performing platform, sometime this summer. So we're thinking June, July, we'll probably see the launch of that SIL 3 version. And I think that is it, definitely it for automation.
Yeah, the one thing I will just throw in on those, if you look at the price between a safety controller in the CompactLogix series versus a standard CompactLogix, the price differential is fairly minimal for all the advantages you could get to adding safety to a machine, even if you were going to do safety later.
I think that's a really great point, Sean, that the price differential has really come down over time. And I think we're talking about doing an event, if we're ever able to get back together again, to kind of show just that. But you're right, the price difference is not that much anymore. It's definitely worthwhile looking at. All right, so I don't have a lot from a networking perspective, but I think 2 quick new stuffs and 2 life cycle changes I want to make you guys aware of. So from a network perspective, one of the new things that has come out over the last few months from ProSoft, one of the Encompass partners, is the use of what they're calling persistent data network technology, or PDN for short. And essentially what this gives you is a secure, always-on cellular connection between remote facilities. So if you typically had a pump station, something across the street, an outbuilding a couple miles down the road, and you were trying to make a connection to it, well, you were typically using some either pretty old technology or maybe trying to use a traditional Wi-Fi solution that involves line of sight, dodging trees, putting things in towers, and all of those are challenging, if you will. And then if you were trying to use cellular, then you start getting traditional cellular solutions. You start getting into the security aspect of it. So in a lot of those cases, you're trying to work with a Verizon or AT&T, asking them for private IPs, trying to configure your VPNs, and it can get very complicated very fast. In fact, we've worked a few projects in which that was the case. So ProSoft has layered this technology on top of their existing cellular solutions, and essentially they have established an easy, always-on cellular data connection. It is perfect for small remote locations like pump stations or the building across the street where you're just trying to get some type of connection. There's no additional software. It is literally an encrypted tunnel between the two sites that is always on. It's easy to configure. Anyway, it's a really neat solution. If you have that type of application, let us know. I think you'll find that beneficial. And then the second and last one that I wanted to call your attention to is for remote access as well. You guys may be familiar with the Flexy 205. It's a very popular product for doing remote access, kind of that I'm making the connection, I'm checking to see what I need to see, and then I'm disconnecting the connection. Not the always on necessarily. HMS or E1, HMS bought E1, who developed the Flexy 205, has now partnered with a company called SciTech, which has a solution called XLREPORTER. All Encompass partners, but the first time they've worked together. And essentially what they've done is taken the data logging capabilities of the Flexy 205 as a remote access device and paired it with their pre-configured Excel templates, reporting templates, to provide really simple, straightforward data reporting that doesn't involve a ton of configuration or a ton of work. So there's two real good scenarios for this. If you are an OEM and you have Flexys deployed maybe with all of your machines, maybe you have 20 deployed at various customer sites all over the place, you can now grab a couple of KPIs, a couple of key data points, and report on them on a daily, weekly, monthly perspective. So maybe it's the number of errors that were thrown from your machine. Maybe it's the number of usage hours on your machine, so you know when you can suggest preventative maintenance to one of your customers. Maybe it's just the cycle counts because you know over a certain time you have a feeling for how much your machine is being used. Or if you're a corporate engineer and you have to support various sites, maybe you want to get quality metrics or different things like that. So the example shown here is a daily corporate production record, all pre-configured. All you do is point to the tags, set the frequency, who you want it to go to, all of those things. Again, very simple, easy way to collect some pretty straightforward reporting. Okay, so that's it for the new stuff. My last two are on some end-of-life announcements. So the first is for switches, and there's one announcement here for Cisco, and there's one announcement here for Rockwell. So I'll just build the slide, if you will. The first for Cisco is for, in the middle there, that upper product, their 3850 rack mount switch. So this product, if you're familiar at all with the CPWE, which is the Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet Reference Architecture, that is the reference architecture that both Rockwell and Cisco wrote for how the plant floor network should be designed. The 3850 is at the heart of that. I think it may have been the original 3750, but then that migrated to the 3850. But that switch was at the heart of that, and wanted to make you guys aware that that product has been announced end of life, and it will no longer be available starting in October of this year, October of 2020. I think it does have about 5 years of support after that, but for new applications, you're really not going to want to select the 3850. You're likely going to want to look at the Catalyst 9000 series. Now that one has some different ways they license, so we'll have to talk to you about it if you have an application, but just let us know and we can get through that. And then on the right hand of the slide is the Stratix 8000 8300. So this was the original collaboration product between Rockwell and Cisco. It's the very first one that they put out together with one of the original operating systems. And that too has been announced end of life. So that will no longer be available starting in November of this year. Right now the migration path is the Stratix 5700. But if I go to my next slide, which is a sneak peek slide, hopefully the Stratix 5800 is coming soon. And that will also be another option for migrating. Now the 5800 is going to have a lot more capability than the original ones that I just showed you, but it is a similar modular design. When this releases, we think probably late summer. We've had a couple of delays on this, but hopefully here late summer. This will be the premier all gigabit platform. It is modular like we showed, and it will be running Cisco's new iOS, so their XE operating system. In addition, Rockwell has designed a whole new GUI interface for configuration, so that is hopefully coming late summer. And I think that is all I have. Back to you, Sean.
All right, thank you, Julia. And now we move back to power. Now, hey everybody. Most of you have been using like a lot of our low voltage drives, and are somewhat familiar, or hopefully very familiar, with the PowerFlex 520 series. As well as the PowerFlex 755. Some of the things that I ultimately wanted to just bring up here is that Rockwell does have a complete set of series of medium voltage drives. The PowerFlex 6000 came into Rockwell's portfolio a few years ago and has gone through a couple of different versions of it. And the latest version last year was taking the original design of the PowerFlex 6000 and moving it into a smaller Atom type platform, which is just basically a lot less floor space, same capabilities, same power, all things associated with it. And then I'll show you here in a second what is the next rendition of that drive. But the 6000 is a general purpose drive made for fans, pumps, anything that's associated with general motor control. And then we do have and have had for many years the PowerFlex 7000 drive, which is ultimately more for regenerative control, applications that take a little bit more, capabilities and programming. What I wanted to specifically talk about here in the PowerFlex 6000 series is that literally here in the last last month or so, they've redesigned it to have more of a 755 type of look, at least to the overall control scheme. And I say that because there's now a PowerFlex 6000T, and that new feature is the control cassettes and the associated other pieces, so that this medium voltage drive will look much more like one of the low voltage drive family when you're integrating it within a controller. Based on that, it'll have the enhanced connectivity, meaning that it'll use the Studio 5000 add-on profiles. Anybody that's familiar with our low voltage drives and use the connected components workbench to program and configure them, that will get that full support as part of the 6000T here also. The HIM will look a little bit more familiar, and then if you do have to do any upgrades in the field, the firmware and all things associated with that are going to be a lot more similar to what you're used to. One of the cool things about this product is it is going to be something that moves into a quick ship program, which is not something that's very usual in the medium voltage world, or at least what I've been familiar with over the years. So once we ship these things, which is coming in June, right? So it's only a month away. By about August timeframe, some of the most common sizes of these are going to be relatively stock, meaning that we're able to ship them in a few weeks based on requirements that you may have. So that's just the overview. If you have detail, or if you need more details or just more information around either one of the medium voltage drives, just let me or one of the specialists know.
Sean, if I remember correctly, I think I heard somewhere that quick ship could be somewhere like in the 6-week time frame, which is, in my mind, unheard of for medium voltage. So that's awesome.
Correct. Yeah. So the idea is that these things will mostly be stock, with some, depending on some of the options and things that are required around a medium voltage motor, but ultimately should be able to get them out the door very quickly.
Very nice.
So with that, then the last couple of slides we have here before we end are just ways to contact Rumsey. So hopefully you're familiar with all of the specialists and us on a daily basis. However, if you're ever questioning who to get in touch with, or maybe want to put a face and a name together, you can go to the Rumsey.com website, and under automation controls, you will see the entire list. This is just a quick screenshot of the first set here. So that is one option to get a hold of us. And then the other option, which you may or may not be familiar with, depending on how often you go to the website, is you will see a chat function pop up.
Yeah, so we launched this new chat feature probably earlier this calendar year, and we're excited to say that as of the last couple of months, the entire specialist team is also part of chat now. So the idea here is that you can communicate with us however you want to, and in particular, especially with the way things are right now, with people working remote and all over the place, and phones being forwarded and cell phones and everything else, we wanted to give you one more way to get right in touch with somebody that can answer your question fast. So our chat does not have computer-generated bots or anything like that. It's real people. It's us. It's the real team. On occasion, you'll see my name pop up there. You'll see Tony Kaminsky's name and some of your favorite specialists pop up there. But essentially, Cynthia, who is on the screen here, is somebody that typically would answer the phone if you were to call. And most often, she'll answer your chat, and then she'll direct you or transfer you to one of the specialists that is online and ready to chat with you for whatever your question might be. If you need help picking out a part number, you're not sure where to go about something, or you're looking for some kind of technical reference, just know that you can go there as well, and you're likely to get one of us from the specialist team.
All right. Thanks, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last slide here I think we have is just general reference sites. So as we went through this presentation, you saw a lot of things that were coming up on end of life, or at least a handful. Obviously, we have to get that information from somewhere, so we want to make sure that we're bringing that to you as soon as we hear about it. However, if you're ever in question and you're designing a new machine, or you're trying to put something else together, there is a product lifecycle status website, which almost every part that I've ever typed in there will come up, and it'll give you whether it's an active product, whether it's a mature product, whether it's obsolete, and kind of where it is in its status and its life. So that's a real good resource for you to go to. Same thing is compatibility and downloads website. especially when you go through the versions of Studio 5000 and which processor goes with which firmware version and which version of Studio. That site gets used quite regularly to be able to make sure to keep all of that stuff straight, even to the point of what version of software runs on what operating system.
Welcome Windows 10.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome Windows 10 and or other server
Server,
versions.
yep.
Yeah, exactly. The server
12.
versions come in there a lot. And then the last one there is just the safety functions documents website, because we've gotten into more and more safety over the years, and we're going to be bringing more and more safety to you. That's a great website for reference documents that'll literally show you wiring diagrams, part number lists, even down to simple programming for different applications. So that is a great overall resource.
Yeah, I agree, Sean. The first two we've used a lot, and I've heard a lot of people reference to that safety functions one.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did talk about how to get in touch with us. We have the ability of obviously to chat and phone, and right here in front of you would be both Julia and my mobile numbers. If any questions come up from this or anything else, feel free to always call one of us, and we will make sure to direct you the correct way if we don't know the answer off the top of our head.
Indeed. And then I would just offer that we do have additional webinars scheduled through the entire month of May, every Tuesday and Thursday. So that link will bring you to the whole list of the ones that are scheduled. I think it's a 2-page PDF. On the front are all the ones that we have completed, and on the back are all the ones that are coming up. So feel free to look through that list, register for some future ones. Or if you hit any of the links for the ones that have passed, it will actually bring you to a landing page with a button that says Watch on Demand. So you can certainly watch those on demand as well. And then I guess last but not least, if you are watching or rewatching this and you received our survey, Sean and I are really interested in continuing to connect with our customers and make sure you guys have the product update information that you need. There's always lots of great articles and everything else and newsletters coming out. But in this session, we wanted to just quickly give you highlights of key products and things you needed to know so you could see if they were pertinent to you and then go look for some additional information on that. We want to keep doing this on maybe a monthly or a quarterly basis, whatever makes the most sense. So please feel free to give us feedback either on the survey if you're watching this or in the comments section of the YouTube channel. Please feel free to comment about how much what else you would like to see, if this was a good format, changes you'd suggest, or how often you'd like to see this type of just quick product updates, new stuff, lifecycle changes, sneak peeks. And I think that's all I have.
All right. Well, this is normally where we'd open it to questions, but we can't do it at this point because it's a re-recording. Thank you.
All right. Everybody stay safe and healthy. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.